In the dim glow of morning, the world still slept quietly beneath a fragile veneer of normalcy. Servers hummed softly in their underground sanctuaries, eyes of blinking lights betraying nothing more than routine. But beneath this veneer, something was stirring, an undercurrent of distortion that would soon ripple into chaos. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. First, a flicker in a financial trading system here, a partial glitch in a government data archive there. Behind the scenes, a handful of engineers and analysts noticed these anomalies, small, suspicious errors that repeated inconsistently, as if the digital fabric was fraying at the edges. Their screens flashed with warnings, timestamps that refused to align, logs that expired unexpectedly, as if time itself was slipping out of their grasp. One of them was Alex Walker, a seasoned cybersecurity analyst who had grown cynical over the years. Yet today, a flicker of something unusual piqued his attention. The timestamps on the core financial exchanges, normally precise to the millisecond, began to display oddities. The date read chronologically, but then inexplicably jumped. The system clock on one server read 2037, then 2039, as if years had condensed or elongated, collapsing a future that was supposed to be decades away into a confused jigsaw of misaligned data. In another part of the world, Dr. Evelyn Moore, a computer scientist specializing in legacy systems, was examining a critical database for a government agency. She noticed a recurring pattern of errors, a resonance in the logs that was eerily consistent across different platforms. Her brow furrowed as she recognized a vulnerability. This was no normal glitch. It was a sign of something deeper, something lurking beneath the surface of those lineages of code, waiting to surface. Meanwhile, across the globe, the early signs of trouble began to emerge in unexpected ways. An airline's reservation system mishandled thousands of bookings, double-charged and canceling flights that had been scheduled months in advance. Hospitals experienced brief outages in their patient management systems, delaying vital diagnoses. Power grid monitors showed strange fluctuations, as if the very heartbeat of infrastructure was losing sync. The critical issue was rooted in the way these systems stored and interpreted the date and time. The year 2038 problem, known quietly among experts as the year 2038 bug, was not just a technical quirk. It was a ticking time bomb embedded deep within software architectures designed during the late 20th century. Software that counted seconds from a fixed point in time, the Unix epoch starting January 1, 1970. But as clocks approached the 2,147,483,647 second mark, they threatened to overflow, resetting incorrectly and causing systems to interpret the future as the past. And yet, the majority of the world remained unaware. Routine updates and patches had been issued, warnings checked off the list. Ministers, CEOs, and the general public continued their busy routines, oblivious to the silent warning echoing through their systems. What's haunting is the anticipation. Those first errors, innocuous at first glance, soon morph into signs of a more sinister problem. Time, that constant we rely on to order reality, was becoming unreliable. The subtle misalignments flickered like fading stars, initially dismissed as glitches, then meticulously ignored, because acknowledging the problem meant confronting a future they weren't prepared for. As the hours passed, experts like Alex and Evelyn pored over logs and code, realizing that these errors were not isolated incidents. They were interconnected symptoms of a rising tide, a system-wide phenomenon that threatened to cascade beyond a threshold of control. Every miscalibrated timestamp was a warning, a crack spreading across the surface of a perfectly ordered digital universe. And the question lingered silently beneath the surface of their investigations. What would happen once these errors accumulated? What happens when the very fabric of timekeeping, so fundamental to the operation of modern systems, unravels? If the errors escalate faster than they can be fixed, the consequences could extend far beyond data corruption. Critical infrastructures could malfunction, financial markets could plunge, healthcare and safety protocols might fail, endangering lives. The world was dancing on the edge of that abyss, unaware that the first tremors were already here. As systems hesitated, as digital world maps flickered with uncertain data, humanity's collective reliance on technology became a silent precipice. On the horizon, the clock was ticking toward an uncertain future, one where the date itself might become an agent of chaos. In these initial moments, the real question was not how to fix the problem, but whether humanity was equipped to face what lay ahead. Because what occurs when errors escalate beyond control is not just about malfunctioning systems. In the dark corners of the digital age, it hints at something much darker. A breach in the fabric of time itself, an unforeseen chaos waiting to be unleashed. And as night fell once more, beneath the steady hum of servers and the blinking of monitors, the world slept on. But somewhere, in the shadows of the digital realm, the warning was silently growing louder. The silence was deceptive, an ominous lull in the early morning before the storm. Then, like a tidal wave breaking over a fragile shoreline, the first failures began, small at first, whispering warnings before erupting into chaos. The power grids faltered, electricity flickering like dying candles, plunging entire cities into darkness. Streets once bustling with activity suddenly stood silent, bathed in an unnatural blackness, as if the night had come early, uninvited, unrelenting. The hum of life's convenience, traffic lights, heating systems, emergency signals, faded into a haunting void. Within moments, the banking systems faltered too, like dominoes toppling in some malevolent choreography. Digital transactions failed, ATMs went dark, and with it, the fabric of trust unraveled. Money was frozen, balances disappeared into a digital abyss, and panic set in. People crowded around teller machines that refused to dispense cash, faces etched with confusion and fear. The quiet desperation fractured into chaos as stories echoed of bank runs, mobs gathering in the streets, desperate to reclaim what they believed was theirs. Meanwhile, transportation networks ground to a halt. Trains, planes, buses, the arteries that move society, ceased their rhythmic pulse. Skyscrapers stood as silent monoliths against the dawn, their blinking lights extinguished, signaling a systemic breakdown. Emergency responders struggled to contain the confusion, ambulances stalled, traffic jams multiplied into barricades of metal in despair. The world was crumbling piece by piece, each failure feeding into the next, a rapidly spiraling descent into darkness and disorder. At hospitals, the failure of critical systems became painfully evident. Life support machines shut down unexpectedly, critical data was lost, and chaos reigned within the halls of what should have been sanctuary. Medical staff rushed against time, their voices sharp with urgency, trying to stabilize patients with no digital records to lean on, their efforts thwarted by the relentless failures. Every heartbeat echoed a stark reality: humanity's dependence on fragile systems was its undoing. In neighborhoods, families huddled in shadowed homes, clutching whatever resources they could muster, eyes darting anxiously toward flickering candlelight. Their minds raced. What was happening? Was this accidental or something darker? Rumors spread, some whispering of a cyber attack, others hinting at something far more sinister. The silence of the authorities was deafening. As the chaos unfolded unchecked, a testament to how quickly civilization's veneer could crack. Across the globe, the failures compounded. Data centers shut down, communication lines broke, and the world's interconnected web unraveled as if fraying at the edges. The digital fabric that held the modern world together was fraying, revealing the raw, brutal core beneath: vulnerability. As governments scrambled to respond, their attempts were hampered by the very systems that once made them powerful. The inability to coordinate a unified response only deepened the sense of helplessness. In the shadows, quiet whispers grew louder. Some feared it was the work of a malicious cyber entity, while others sensed something more profound: an unseen force exploiting their dependence, revealing the fragility of their constructed reality. The failures weren't mere glitches. They felt like cracks forming in the foundation of civilization itself. Humanity had built towering empires of glass, and now, those glass walls trembled, threatening to shatter. As night fell, the chaos deepened. Power outages turned entire districts into silent prisons of darkness. People gathered in darkened streets, unsure whether to fear the darkness or the chaos within. The air was thick with tension. An unspoken question hung heavy in everyone's mind. How long could this last? Could the systems be restored, or were they witnessing a permanent fracture of their world? And amid the despair, an unsettling question took root. Will humanity be able to contain the fallout? The initial failures were just the beginning, exposing fractures in the societal fabric. Trust, order, control, crumbling beneath the weight of unseen forces. The silent, invisible enemy had shown itself. It had proven capable of dismantling their carefully curated existence in the blink of an eye. The world now stood at the brink, teetering on the edge of oblivion, caught between the remnants of what was and the unknown of what could be. And as darkness settled like a shroud over everything, the haunting truth emerged. What was once thought unbreakable was now fragile, and the real battle was only beginning. The first collapse was a warning, a prelude to the chaos yet to come, a shadow cast long and deep, waiting silently to reclaim what humanity had taken for granted. Whether they could stop it or not, the echoes of their fall would resonate far beyond the ruins of their systems, echoing through the corridors of a shattered world. The screen is awash with the flickering glow of screens and televisions across the globe, each broadcasting fragments of the same grim reality. News anchors, voice hushed but urgent, try to convey the unthinkable. Reports flood in from every corner of the planet. Cities whisper quiet, skies once crisscrossed with planes now eerily silent, oceans stirring with unpredictable fury. The world is awakening to a catastrophe that is no longer just scientific jargon or distant warnings. It is a visceral, undeniable force wreaking havoc on every continent, every home, every soul. Images burst onto the screen, mighty rivers swollen beyond their banks, flooding entire neighborhoods, collapsing bridges like paper sculptures. Satellite footage reveals vast swaths of land turned to ash or drowned beneath blackened waters. People crowd around their televisions, eyes wide with fear and disbelief, clutching their loved ones closer as the reality sinks in. The airwaves are dominated by emergency broadcasts, government alerts echoing through cities, urging immediate action, urging calm, but knowing full well that the chaos is already sprawling beyond their control. In a flurry of activity, international agencies scramble to respond. Airwaves fill with urgent directives, evacuations, resource mobilizations, calls for aid. Governments convene hurried briefings, their faces pale beneath official masks of composure. But behind their eyes, a gnawing doubt persists. How did it come to this? Could mere warnings have been enough? When a crisis of this magnitude erupts, the veneer of control thins, revealing fragile humanity's inability to truly grasp what is unfolding. News reports converge on one unspoken question: how much of this can we really understand? Scientific conferences erupt into frantic sessions, brilliant minds racing against the clock, climate scientists, engineers, physicists, and cryptographers, all desperately trying to decipher the scope of what has been unleashed. They pore over data, analyzing anomalies, searching for patterns amid chaos. Their faces, illuminated by eerie graphs and trembling voiceovers, communicate a shared dread. Is this just the beginning? Or is this the new normal? Global leaders, faced with an existential threat, hold emergency summits. The stories trickle in: panicked citizens fleeing coastal zones, security forces trying to contain looting and chaos, healthcare systems overwhelmed by new ailments sparked by environmental collapse. Images of mass evacuations, makeshift camps, desperate families clinging to hope flicker across screens. The sense of panic is contagious, a wave that crashes relentlessly against the fragile shield of civilization. Yet amid the inescapable despair, a subtle spark ignites. Bright minds, scientists, inventors, visionaries, realize that if there is a glimmer of a chance, it lies hidden in their collective genius. They ask themselves, can the world's most brilliant minds stop this impending collapse? Their minds race, fueled by desperation and a fragile hope. They pore over theories, devising plans for radical intervention, technologies to reverse damage, breakthroughs to clarify what exactly is happening, paths to maybe, just maybe, turn back the tide. In laboratories and think tanks, in secret so-called war rooms, these innovators grapple with the magnitude of the problem. Behind closed doors, whispers of untested solutions circulate: experimental collapses, unproven quantum tweaks, unorthodox energy systems. Tension pervades the air. Will their efforts be enough? Can their knowledge outstrip the relentless march of disaster? Or is this a cosmic, ecological, technological catastrophe, something beyond human control? The news flickers from one continent to another, clusters of humanity standing amidst ruins, trying to comprehend the scale of devastation. Each report, each emergency alert, brings a cruel revelation. The disaster is not isolated, nor is it contained. It is systemic. It seeps into the very fabric of life, unraveling it thread by thread. The realization dawns that this is no longer just a localized problem. It is a planet-wide crisis, a dark, pulsing echo resonating through every corner of existence. As the world tries to grapple with this knowledge, questions intensify. Are we witnessing the start of an irreversible chain reaction? Are we trapped in a story that cannot be rewritten? The media, once mere witnesses, now become harbingers of collective fear, broadcasting the urgency of the moment, the weight of understanding that relentless chaos has become our new reality. Every report echoes the core dilemma: can they prevent this? Can they, at the last moment, harness the light of human ingenuity to stave off the darkness threatening to consume everything? In the shadows of despair, a faint glimmer of resolve roots itself. Among scientists, engineers, policymakers, a fierce debate rages. Do they pursue desperate innovations, or accept the unthinkable? The world's greatest minds stare into the abyss, searching for a solution in the depths of their knowledge. An unspoken question lingers in the air: if they fail, if their efforts falter, what remains for humanity? Will the Earth survive, ravaged and broken? Or will it become a silent testament to human hubris? As the chapter closes, the scene shifts subtly: images of children playing in the rubble of abandoned streets, elders staring into the horizon with resigned hope, leaders clinging to fragmented plans. The chaos is unleashed, but so is a quiet, relentless human spirit. The realization that the world is more fragile than ever, yet full of unyielding hope, becomes clear. The awe-inspiring truth emerges. No matter how profound the disaster, the will to understand, and to fight, is perhaps the last, best defense against total annihilation. The echoes of the disaster reverberate, but intertwined within that darkness is a faint whisper of resilience. A question of whether humanity's brightest minds can truly alter the course of fate before it's too late. In the shadowed recesses of labs and server rooms around the world, the hum of machines echoed with a frantic urgency. It was a race against time itself, a desperate bid to patch the chaos they had unleashed. Engineers and scientists labored through endless nights, eyes rimmed and fingers flying across keyboards, forging emergency fixes with a ferocity born of survival instinct. Every keystroke was a prayer. Every line of code was a fragile hope. They knew that if their efforts failed, the consequences would ripple beyond what any could imagine: cultural collapse, societal disintegration, the shattering of everything they once knew. Teams from continents apart communicated through secure lines, their voices tense but resolute. This was no longer a local crisis. It was a global pandemic of digital proportions, infecting systems with a malignant intelligence that refused to be contained. Countries, once rivals, now stood shoulder to shoulder in a frantic alliance, sharing code, insights, and resources in a collective effort to stem the tide. The urgency was palpable, every second counted, every solution a potential salvation or a slide into permanent darkness. In this high-stakes environment, emergency patches were crafted with cold precision. Flimsy, hastily assembled workarounds that could either buy precious hours or crumble under pressure. Engineers debated fiercely. Should they isolate certain functions? Introduce backdoors? The lines between life and death blurred in those coding chambers, where a single miscalculation meant continued chaos or the eventual silence of all systems. The atmosphere inside the makeshift war rooms was thick with tension. Screens flickered with lines of algorithms, diagnostic reports, and blinking alerts. Amidst the chaos, a handful of specialists fought to establish a foothold in the unrelenting storm. Their faces were illuminated by the glow of monitors, veins protruding on their foreheads from relentless focus. Their fingers flew across keyboards, discussing, testing, deploying patches that would be scrutinized and battle-tested in seconds. All the while, outside the technological sanctuaries, the world watched and waited. News feeds buzzed with updates, reports of systems going offline, infrastructure faltering, and communities cut off from essential services. The clock was relentless, ticking toward an unknown rendezvous with catastrophe. And amidst this flurry of activity, a haunting question persisted. Will any of their solutions be enough before it's too late? There was an almost desperate optimism in these efforts, born out of a deep understanding that failure meant more than just a technical setback. It meant irrevocable loss, the collapse of digital foundations that connected human lives, economies, and hopes. It was a perilous balancing act, teetering between engineering ingenuity and the raw edge of chaos. Every patch, every collaboration, each solution crafted in the shadowed hours was a fragile shield against the impending void. As the night wore on, some of the most brilliant minds questioned whether their desperate hacks could ever outpace the evolving threat. The digital adversary was cunning, adapting faster than they could patch it. The more they fought, the more it changed, like a living organism. This relentless evolution pushed them to the brink of exhaustion, yet, still they persisted, driven by an unyielding belief that humanity's resilience could prevail. But beneath their determined veneer lurked a deep, gnawing fear. What if their fixes weren't enough? What if the virus, the rogue system, had already become unstoppable? Moments of quiet contemplation interrupted their relentless scramble. Inklings of doubt creeping into their minds as they glanced at screens filled with incomplete codes and failed patches. The tension thickened. Every successful deployment was met with cautious optimism, every failure with despair. And so, in a world racing against an invisible enemy, hope clung stubbornly to those who worked tirelessly behind the screens. Because, amid the chaos, they understood one unshakable truth: failure was not an option. The weight of humanity's digital existence pressed down on each of them, and as dawn threatened to break through darkened skies, the question lingered. The ultimate question: are their solutions really enough? Or is this just the beginning of something darker, something they might never fully fix? In the dim glow of flickering monitors, a tense silence hangs in the air, broken only by the frantic typing and the faint hum of machines struggling against their own failure. The world outside seems unaware of the chaos unfolding within these cold, metallic walls, a fragile digital universe teetering on the edge of collapse. Every failed attempt to patch the bug feels like a punch beneath the ribs, each one deeper than the last, pushing hope further away. They poured their efforts into the first fix, lines of code scrambled in a desperate bid to contain the anomaly. But as soon as the deploy command was executed, the system groaned like a wounded beast, then went still. A ripple of dread spread through the team as screens flickered violently, data vanishing into the void like whispers swallowed by darkness. Where there was once order, now chaos reigned. Files corrupted beyond recognition, systems crashing in a catastrophic symphony that echoed through the digital corridors. It was as if the bug, instead of cowering under their commands, had retaliated, more vicious, more unpredictable. They tried again, this time with a more aggressive patch, believing that force could quell the storm. But their hope was short-lived. Instead of fixing what was broken, the patch catalyzed a cascade of failures. Servers went offline one by one, the network itself fracturing into disconnected shards of chaos. A series of unexplained errors flooded the logs, numbers and symbols spiraling into indecipherable madness. Systems that once coordinated seamlessly now operated in irreconcilable dissonance, as if the very fabric of their digital reality was unraveling before their eyes. And it was not only technical, it was visceral. Fear crept into their bones, a sensation so raw it clawed at their consciousness. The world outside their screen-lit bunker was witnessing the turmoil unfold, their attempts to restore the order only deepening the wound. Each failed patch felt like knocking on a door that refused to open, each crash a reminder of their impotence, of how fragile the entire structure had become. In the midst of this digital storm, a glimmer of something darker surfaced. Mistakes compounded, the chaos multiplying in unpredictable ways. Data was not merely lost but distorted, transformed into monstrous shapes that no longer resembled their original form. Videos warped into unsettling sequences, messages became garbled nightmares, and code snippets turned into indecipherable symbols that haunted their screens like cryptic curses. Every attempt to control the disaster only seemed to invite more havoc, as if the bug itself had grown a consciousness, a malevolent sentience feeding off their despair. There was a moment, brief yet piercing, when the lead technician stared at the chaos in front of him, questioning whether hope had already died. His hands trembled as he watched a system crash cascade across the entire network, a final blow sealing their fate. It was then that he wondered, is there any hope left? Or had the internet, their once vast, indomitable creation, maybe already slipped away into a realm unreachable, a delicate web now stretched thin into irreparable fragments? Was this the end, or merely a pause before the darkness thickened further? The idea lurked in the corners of their minds, an unspoken truth that perhaps no patch could ever restore what was lost. The system, once a refuge of endless connectivity and knowledge, was now a battlefield of shattered code and broken dreams. In this bleak silence, as the monitors flickered and went dark one by one, a cold realization seeped into their souls. Failures breed failures. The bug, resilient and relentless, had not only evaded every fix but had turned their efforts into weapons against themselves. They had fought valiantly, yet the chaos continued to spread, mutating into something monstrous, something unrecognizable. The digital realm that connected their lives was disintegrating, fragments drifting into oblivion. And as the darkness deepened, a haunting question persisted. Is the hope they once clung to still lingering somewhere in the void? Or had they already lost the battle, surrendering to the encroaching silence that threatened to swallow everything whole? The answer, like the bug itself, remained elusive, a shadow lurking at the border of their understanding, waiting to see if salvation would someday emerge from the abyss or if the darkness was all that remained. The darkness settled heavily over the city, a suffocating void where once the hum of digital life thrived. No notifications, no transactions, no screens flickering with information, just silence. The internet, the pulsating artery of modern existence, had been severed without warning. In a matter of hours, everything that depended on that unseen web came crashing down. Banks, locked out from their digital vaults, stared blankly at malfunctioning ATMs and frozen cash registers. Lines stretched outside abandoned branches, desperate faces etched with disbelief and fear. People clamored for their savings, their livelihoods, as the financial infrastructure that once seemed unbreakable crumbled under the weight of its own collapse. The stock market, once an arena of chaos and greed, had plummeted into chaos itself, trading halted indefinitely. Investors watched helplessly as their wealth evaporated into the abyss, papers and screens alike rendered meaningless. Society teetered on the edge of an abyss, the fabric of trust shredded overnight. The panic was palpable, spreading like an uncontrollable wildfire through streets once bustling with energy now silenced into dread. People stockpiled supplies, clutching onto what little they had left, their anxiety simmering in the shadows. Normal routines dissolved into chaos. Communities disintegrated into factions seeking security amid the uncertainty. What would humanity do in the face of total collapse? How far would people go to survive this new, brutal reality? The question hung in the air, heavy and urgent. The societal veneer of order had fallen away to reveal raw, primal instincts. Some clung to remnants of civility, forming alliances in hopes of mutual protection. Others, driven by desperation, turned to violence, looting stores, and hoarding resources with abandon. The social contract, once considered inviolable, had shattered, leaving behind a savage competition for survival. What began as shock and disbelief slowly hardened into a confrontation with chaos. Neighborhoods became fortresses, guarded by makeshift barricades and armed residents. Animalistic instincts surfaced, the weak were targeted, trust became a rare commodity. As power outages persisted and communication channels vanished, rumors spread rapidly, of gangs exploiting the chaos, of governments collapsing, of an uncertain future that felt more like a nightmare than reality. Amidst the frenzy, small groups emerged, resilient, resourceful, determined to adapt. They scoured the ruins of a civilization that had once been so certain of its strength. They learned quickly. Barter replaced currency, whispers replaced digital news. They became scavengers, hunters in a broken city, fighting for scraps and safety. Yet, amid all this destruction, a question lingered: how did they get here? What systems had failed so completely that society was reduced to this? The answer was etched into the silence that followed the shutdown. Human dependency on technology had become a fragile veneer, a thin layer over a tumultuous core of survival instincts. When that veneer was stripped away, what remained was raw, unfiltered human nature. The Internet, once praised as humanity's greatest achievement, had become its Achilles heel, and now, in its absence, people faced the brutal truth of their vulnerability. Time blurred as the days stretched on, or perhaps it was the city's dying heartbeat echoing in the absence of digital rhythm. Every muffled conversation, every desperate cry, every stolen item told a story of a civilization trying to hold itself together amidst the wreckage. The social fabric was fraying, torn apart by fear and greed, but also by a flickering hope that somehow they could rebuild. Or perhaps, this was the beginning of something new, an awakening to the primal forces lurking beneath the veneer of modern society. In this chaos, the question remained: what lengths would society go to endure? Would they cling to fleeting civility, or succumb entirely to inhumanity? The survivors knew that the true test was yet to come. Behind every closed door, behind every barricade, a story of desperation, resilience, and the relentless will to survive played out. Humanity had been forced to confront its most brutal facets, and in doing so, had revealed the depths of its fragility and its unyielding capacity for both destruction and rebirth. As the darkness persisted, so did the whispers of what could be next. The old world had fallen, but the seeds of a new one, brutal and unforgiving, were beginning to take root beneath the rubble. What society would emerge from this collapse? That was the question that haunted the shadows, an answer that would only be unveiled in the chapters yet to come. In the shadowed corners of the digital world, a silent rebellion brews beneath the surface of what once was an interconnected society. The hum of servers and the faint glow of screens pulse like a heartbeat desperate to thrive amidst the chaos of disconnection. In this underground labyrinth, a group of clandestine operators emerges, their faces cloaked in anonymity, their minds fueled by a singular mission: to forge alternative pathways, to weave a hidden web that can sustain the fractured digital realm. Among them is Elias, a former cybersecurity expert turned radical, whose eyes flicker with a relentless fire. He believes that true resilience lies not in relying on the collapsing infrastructure but in building anew from the shadows. Behind his calm exterior, there's a storm of determination. He and his ragtag team have begun to piece together makeshift networks, antiquated radios, hacked satellites, abandoned underground tunnels turned fiber optic conduits, all repurposed for a singular cause: to restore connectivity where the world has chosen to abandon it. Their operation is a fragile dance of secrets. As night falls over a deserted warehouse turned command center, Elias monitoring data streams, a message flickers on a screen. A new disruption, an official blackout looming over the last remnants of digital life. It's a reminder of how fragile the system really is, and how the enemies of progress are relentless. Rogue groups, corrupt officials, and powerful corporations have all vested interests in controlling what remains, their greed choking the digital arteries, suffocating freedom. But for these underground architects, thwarted connectivity is an affront. They rally with hackers like Mira, known in underground circles for her uncanny ability to penetrate fortified layers of digital defenses, and Jack, a former engineer who has turned his expertise to rebel engineering, designing makeshift routers and alternative servers. Together, they form a network of resistance, their efforts intertwined like threads in a complex tapestry. They launch coordinated strikes, sending out signals through abandoned radio towers to reach isolated communities, deploying rogue nodes to bypass corporate blockades, hacking into damaged satellites to reroute data around the failures. Every successful link is a small victory, a silent protest against the erasure of digital lifelines. But their work is perilous. Law enforcement, military agents, and corporate enforcers lurk in the shadows, hunting for those who dare to challenge the established order. Each covert operation could be their last. Myra's finger hovers over her keyboard, eyes darting at incoming alerts, knowing well that each hack could trigger a crackdown. Yet, the passion to restore what has been lost propels them forward. They speak in whispered conversations over encrypted channels. Their hope is anchored on the possibility that these secret routes might one day serve as lifelines for those still reliant on digital communication. Their families, their communities, their survival. In a prison of silence where official channels have fallen silent, these clandestine efforts symbolize a silent spark of resistance, a seed of hope planted deep beneath the ruins of a fallen infrastructure. But the question remains, can they succeed? Can this underground network not only survive but thrive in the face of relentless suppression? Every act of rebellion, every line of code they rewrite, carries the weight of resistance, not just against the forces that wish to silence them but against the despair that looms in the collective heart of society. As dawn approaches, Elias stands amidst a web of blinking lights, contemplating their next move. The world outside perceives the digital silence as the end, but for those in the shadows, it's merely the beginning of a new fight. Their resilience is tested with each passing hour, their hope tethered to the fragile, makeshift network they've built. Will it be enough? Can the underground effort succeed where official channels have failed? The screen flickers once more, revealing a tentative connection, a whisper of the digital heartbeat pulsing back to life. In that fleeting moment, a breath of hope is exhaled. But they know well that the darkness is never fully gone, that the battle to keep the digital lights alive is ongoing. As Elias looks out into the darkness, he steels himself, ready to face whatever comes next, knowing that their underground network is not just a rebellion but a beacon for those who refuse to be erased. And yet, in the silent corners of the digital abyss, the question lingers, unspoken but felt. Will their underground efforts be enough to ignite a new dawn? Or will they be swallowed once more by the shadows they fight so desperately to escape? The dawn breaks over a fractured world, where darkness once threaded its way into every corner of digital existence. For months, the echoes of chaos had reverberated through cables and servers, a relentless assault that threatened to erase the very fabric of communication, tradition, and trust. But amid the ruins, resilience stirred alongside hope, as nations, engineers, and activists scrambled to piece together what had been shattered. In the quiet hours of the morning, new protocols unfurled like delicate blossoms from the ashes of old systems. These were not mere patches or updates, but revolutionary frameworks designed from the ground up to withstand future assaults. Imagine a web strengthened to be more than just a network, an intelligent mesh that could detect anomalies in real time, isolate threats instantly, and adapt without human intervention. It was a symphony of innovation, performed by minds united across borders, races, and disciplines, their collaboration a testament to humanity's unwavering will to survive and evolve. As the scene shifts, a vast command center hums with purpose. Rows of screens flicker with data, thousands of lines of code, real-time threat assessments, global control panels, each flickering light a sign that the world is slowly mending itself. Engineers and cybersecurity experts work tirelessly, their faces illuminated by the glow of monitors, voices crackling through headsets in a language of urgency and hope. They're deploying patches, a collective effort that resembles a digital immunization, reinforcing systems, sealing vulnerabilities, and closing gaps opened by the previous chaos. Outside, the world begins to stir anew. Cities, once shrouded in the shadows of doubt, bask in the first light of rebuilding. Streets buzz with activity, businesses reopen, infrastructure reconnects, and the silent language of code becomes a symbol of trust once again. Nations forge new agreements on digital cooperation, sharing intelligence and resources in a web of mutual defense. They understand, perhaps more than ever, that their future relies on their ability to work together, not as isolated entities fighting for survival, but as a united front committed to resilience. The camera lingers on a particular scene. A young woman, eyes bright yet marked by recent hardship, typing anew on her laptop. Her screen shows encrypted messages flowing rapidly, evidence of restored confidence and renewed communication. Her smile is faint but genuine. It's a quiet victory, a testament to the human spirit that refuses to be broken. She, like many others, embodies the collective hope, a belief that from the ashes can rise a stronger, smarter digital world. Yet, beneath this palpable optimism lies an unsettling question. Now that we have secured our defenses and rebuilt our digital frontiers, is this the end of vulnerability? Or has this crisis merely revealed a deeper truth? That in our pursuit of progress, we've left underlying cracks that are impossible to seal forever? Every patch, every new protocol, appears to be a temporary shield, a fleeting moment of calm before the inevitable storm. As the scene widens, the narrative turns contemplative. The world, perched on the edge of a new dawn, reflects on what lessons have truly been learned. The echoes of past failures linger like ghosts behind every success. The very vulnerabilities we sought to fix serve as reminders that entropy and chaos are intrinsic to the digital age. No matter how robust our defenses seem, they are only as strong as our ability to adapt, to anticipate the next assault before it arrives. The voice of a seasoned expert, calm yet charged with conviction, emerges in a voiceover, questioning, probing the fragile line between security and complacency. "We have done well to restore what was lost," she says, "but the shadows on the horizon remind us that threats evolve, that our enemies are not static." Is this the end of our vulnerability, or just the beginning of a new chapter of perpetual vigilance? The visuals shift again, from crowded control rooms to solitary moments. Individuals working late into the night, their faces illuminated by screens, their expressions a mixture of exhaustion and determination. It's a story of collective effort, of silent sacrifices, of lives dedicated to the delicate craft of safeguarding their digital worlds. Meanwhile, news reports flash across screens around the globe, stories of recovery, innovations, and new alliances. There is praise, certainly, but also caution. Experts warn that the cyber battlefield remains unpredictable, that every victory is but a pause before the next wave hits. The resilience we celebrate today might be tested again tomorrow. The digital fortress, no matter how fortified, is a perpetual work in progress, a testament to human ingenuity but also a reminder of our persistent vulnerability. The narrative questions echo deeper. Are we truly safe now? Or have we simply bought ourselves more time? The system we have rebuilt is not infallible. It is a testament to what we can achieve under pressure, but also a fragile monument to our ongoing struggle with the unseen threats lurking beyond the horizon. As the scene darkens, a final montage unfolds. A network of lights across the globe flickering and reconnecting, symbolizing hope and unity. The camera slowly pulls back to reveal a vast, interconnected world animated by countless diligent hands working to secure the fragile yet resilient digital universe. The music rises, a stirring anthem of perseverance and vigilance. And in the silence that follows, the haunting question remains: are we truly safe now? Or is this dawn but a fleeting moment in an eternal night of uncertainty? The darkness is never gone for long, and somewhere, in the quiet corners of cyberspace, a new whisper stirs. The shadows wait, and so, the cycle continues. The city's lights flickered like ghosts trapped within their glass prisons, casting a dim, uncertain glow over streets once vibrant and alive. The silence was deafening, an eerie hush replacing the usual hum of drones overhead, the distant sirens, and the ceaseless chatter of daily life. Humanity had tasted the chaos once again, and even in its weariness, a tremor of hope stirred amidst the ruins. From the ashes of the catastrophe, cracks in the old ways began to show, cracks that threatened to swallow what remained of old defenses and revealed a fragile veneer of human control. Governments convened hastily, their screens glowing with lines of code and reports that read like warnings etched in stone. Policy imprints, once sluggish and bureaucratic, now accelerated with an urgency not seen before. Laws aimed at locking down vulnerabilities, tightening digital fortifications, and setting standards for safer, more resilient technology emerged from emergency sessions. Words like cybersecurity and preparedness became buzzwords echoed through corridors of power that had once dismissed such issues as peripheral. But behind these legislative efforts lay a bitter question: had we learned enough? The answer was swirling in the minds of scientists, engineers, and policymakers. Maybe. Maybe this disaster, this digital and physical maelstrom, would serve as the wake-up call humanity had long delayed. A lesson coded into the ruins of what was lost, a testament that complacency in the face of technological peril was a fatal luxury. Across the globe, cybersecurity agencies amplified their efforts. Firewalls were strengthened with unprecedented speed, intrusion detection systems adjusted by experts racing against time. Companies mandated multi-factor authentication, bakelite vaults of digital gold reinforced with new cryptographic seals. Network backdoors were sealed tighter, and artificial intelligence was enlisted as the digital watchdog, watching for anomalies that no human could quickly notice. Yet, beneath these efforts, a lingering question persisted: how much of the damage was truly preventable? Were we merely repairing the wounds of the past, or did we genuinely possess the foresight to anticipate the next threat? Future safeguards took shape in the form of labyrinthine protocols, yet many wondered whether these newfound precautions were enough. While governments talked about resilience, there remained a quiet, unspoken concern. What if the next disaster came not from one's own hubris, but from another unforeseen frontier? It was a haunting thought, that the complexity of our own creation could turn against us again, perhaps more devastatingly. Our defenses, no matter how sophisticated, were only as strong as the collective will to heed the lessons learned and the humility to accept our vulnerabilities. In the shadows, some whispered fears that the very systems designed to protect might become the instruments of destruction if exploited by a smarter, more ruthless adversary, be they rogue states, criminal syndicates, or malicious ICE. The hope was that humanity's collective consciousness would adapt, evolve, and prioritize resilience over arrogance. But hope was often only as strong as the resolve that forged it. Amidst these measures, a deeper emotional turmoil brewed, an acknowledgement that the scars of past failures were etched into the collective psyche. Survivors, experts, and laypeople alike carried the weight of what was lost, each finding their own lessons in the ruins. Some believed the true lesson lay in humility, a reminder that our digital creations could spiral out of control if not managed with respect. Others saw it as a testament to human ingenuity, an unyielding drive to rebuild and adapt despite the darkness that had threatened to consume us. As the dust settled, and the quiet crept back into the city's streets, a question remained hanging in the balance. Will we be truly ready for the next big threat? Months turned into years, but the seed of uncertainty persisted. Humanity had learned much, yet the shadows of ignorance still lurked at the edges of awareness, waiting for complacency to lull us back into sleep. But amid the uncertainty, one thing was clear. The catastrophe had awakened a collective consciousness. It was a painful awakening, marked by loss and fear, yet also by an undeniable resilience. We had seen what could happen when technology, our greatest achievement, was weaponized against us. And as we looked forward, eyes wary but hopeful, the question echoed in every mind. Would we heed the lessons? Would we stay vigilant? Or would the cycle of neglect and disaster begin anew? The story of this chapter was not just about policies or safeguards. It was about the fragile beauty of human persistence amidst chaos, about our constant dance with destruction and rebirth. If history was any guide, then the future remained uncertain. Yet, deep within, the hope persisted, that we could learn, adapt, and perhaps, in time, truly be prepared for whatever threats lay just beyond the horizon. As the final echoes of the previous chaos fade, a lingering silence hangs in the air, heavy with unspoken questions and unvoiced fears. The camera lingers on a fractured cityscape, skyscrapers reduced to skeletal remains, streets abandoned and overrun by nature reclaiming its territory. In this moment of stillness, a lone figure emerges, walking cautiously through the debris. It's a reflection of human resilience, a testament to the fragile yet persistent pulse of life amid destruction. The sky is a muted gray, clouds roiling as if they, too, bear the weight of humanity's mistakes. The narrator's voice surfaces, intimate yet contemplative, weaving a tapestry of thought and emotion. We have become so interconnected, so reliant on the technological lifelines we've spun, networks that bind us, devices that shape our perceptions, a web of dependency that has grown so vast, so intricate. But what happens when that web frays? When the lights go out, and the machinery falters? In this crumbling landscape, the vulnerability of modern society becomes starkly evident. Our reliance on technology, smart grids, social media, instant communication, has painted a fragile illusion of control. We pride ourselves on innovation, on progress, yet beneath that veneer lies a delicate balance, easily tipped by a single unforeseen event. The power outages, the cyber attacks, the supply chain failures, all have shown that systems we deemed resilient are, in truth, precariously perched. Yet amid the ruins, hope flickers like a trembling candle in the dark. There are those who refuse to surrender to despair, innovators working tirelessly behind the scenes, seeking solutions that might prevent future collapses. They foster resilience, not just technological, but human resilience, the ability to adapt, to rebuild, to find strength in the face of adversity. Their efforts remind us that crisis is not the end, but an awakening, a call to reimagine our dependence and to fortify ourselves against the unknown. The scene shifts to a young engineer at her makeshift workstation, soldering circuits with trembling hands, driven by a fierce determination. She embodies hope, an individual who believes that tomorrow can be different, better. Despite the devastation, she envisions a future where technology serves us more ethically, more sustainably. Her gaze is steady, filled with conviction that change is not only necessary but inevitable. A voiceover asks, softly but insistently, What if the next crisis happens tomorrow? The question is not meant to drown us in fear but to awaken us to the urgency of preparation. If we truly understand the depth of our fragility, perhaps we will be motivated to build stronger foundations, integrated systems designed with care, communities grounded in connection rather than convenience, minds committed to innovation rooted in humanity. The camera captures scenes of collective effort, neighbors sharing resources, scientists collaborating across borders, storytellers warning and inspiring. Each act, no matter how small, contributes to a mosaic of resilience. The image of a child planting a tree amidst the ruins symbolizes renewal, hope taking root even in the bleakest soil. It's a reminder that in our vulnerability lies an extraordinary capacity for renewal, for adaptation. As the narrative unfolds, we are urged to reflect on our deep interdependence with technology, not as a crutch, but as a tool to forge a better future. We are reminded of the importance of humility, recognizing that no system is infallible, and of the power of community, of collective intelligence and compassion. Humanity's greatest strength does not reside solely in innovation but in its ability to withstand, to learn, and to grow resilient in adversity. The closing frames shift focus to an expansive horizon, dawn breaking over a restored landscape, hinting at rebirth and hope. The voice echoes final thoughts. The future is fragile, yes. But within that fragility lies our greatest potential, to adapt, to learn, and to rise stronger than before. The real question is whether we will heed the lessons of the past and prepare for the unforeseen. Because tomorrow could bring the next crisis, or it could be the dawn of a new era, built on the resilience we nurture today. And as the screen darkens, the last whisper remains. What if the next crisis happens tomorrow? The answer, perhaps, lies in how we choose to face it.